Hey guys, it's Sabs. I am back with another video. All right guys, now a while back I did a first time home buyer video, which was part 1. And now that I have completed the home buying process, I can do part 2 of that video for you, which I have been waiting to do. And I know some of you have been waiting for. Please excuse my mic. I did not wear the right shirt for this today, but I also didn't feel like changing my shirt. Before we get started, guys, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe below, and feel free to share this with your friends and family as well. And we're going to get right into the first time home buying tips part 2, where we are starting off with what happens after you are ready to make the offer. So you are ready to make an offer. So how do you go about doing that, and what do you do? So once you find the house of your dreams and you want to make an offer on this house, you're going to contact your realtor and let them know that you want to make an offer. Also, be sure to let them know which house you want to make an offer on. This is why paying attention to the address of the houses that you look at is important. Now, once you tell your realtor you're ready to make an offer on that dream home of yours, she is then going to coach you about what she thinks or he thinks is a suitable offer for the house that you're looking at. A good realtor is going to do this, okay? So that is something that is important for you to note. Now, in this current COVID market, it is a competitive housing market right now. In Massachusetts, it's been competitive for years, way before COVID. That being said, you need to be prepared to offer over the asking price to get the house of your dreams. This is why it's very important, as I mentioned in part 1, that you know what your max budget is. And when you're looking for houses, you try not to pick a house that is at the top of your budget. This is very, very important. So you tell your realtor you're ready to make an offer. The realtor is going to tell you what they think is reasonable offer for that house. You may not agree with that. You may want to go less than that. But remember, yes, they're trying to get commission, but at the same time, they're also trying to get you that house. If you don't get the house, they don't get the commission. So they know the market better than you do. So listen to what they are saying. So our realtor told us, I cannot see that house going for $550K. If you want to be competitive, you're probably going to want to offer for that, which was what we were prepared to do. So we offered $550K. The house was $525K. So again, we offered over the listing price. One thing to keep in mind is that in our situation, the owner had already received offers on the house and did not accept any of them. So we really had to be competitive. I don't know why I'm saying comparison. Funny. We really had to be competitive if we wanted to get that house. Now, once you tell your realtor the offer that you want to make on the house, the realtor is then going to reach out to the seller or the listing agent. You may not have a listing agent. In our situation, we did. So she reached out to the listing agent and let them know we wanted to make an offer and the amount. The listing agent then notified the seller. So after that, you have to wait. And this is the hardest part about the home buying process. After you make the offer, you just have to wait to hear back whether or not your offer was accepted or it was declined. That was the longest 24 hours of my life. I just want to share that with you guys. But you might as well not twiddle your thumbs, because there's nothing you can do until then. So go do something else to keep yourself occupied so you try not to think about it. It's not the easiest thing to do. So the next day, we received a phone call from our realtor that told us, congratulations, you're going to be homeowners. The seller accepted your offer. Now, before I go to the next tip or the next point that I want to go into after this process, is that I don't know what happens if your offer is declined. So if you want to know about that, definitely search for a YouTube video for that, because we didn't have an offer declined. The first house we made an offer on, we got. So Just wanted to add that little tip in there for you. So now you move on to another process. So your offer has been accepted, but you are not ready to close on this house just yet. There is another thing that you have to do, and that is called the home inspection. And this is a part that a lot of people dread because you want to know what's going on with the house, but at the same time, you kind of don't want to know if there's something wrong with the house. So the next step that we had was the home inspection. And this was scheduled by our realtor with an inspector who was going to inspect the property. You need to be present for that. This is very important, okay? Because if anything's wrong with that house, the homeowner inspector is gonna find it, and you need to know about those things, even if you don't really want to know. So we set a date to go do the home inspection. We met the inspector at the property and with our realtor. And what the home inspector will do is they are going to inspect the entire house, and not just the house, but the property outside of the house. Keep that in mind. I'm gonna come back to that in just a second. The home inspector started with the outside of the house first. So they walked around, they checked the foundation, which is really important. They checked the land and all of that stuff. And along the way, the home inspector takes pictures. And I also took notes. And I recommend that you take notes too, because even though it's a home inspector, they're human. And sometimes people make mistakes. And so after that, we walked into the house and the home inspector started with the basement. If you don't have a basement, you're not gonna have this step. Pointed out things in the basement that he said needed to be fixed or would recommend fixing. He will also check to make sure things that are supposed to be working in the house are actually working. So he checks all of the outlets. He checks the water. He's gonna turn on the water in the bathroom, the kitchen. He's gonna check to see if the dishwasher actually works. He's gonna check the stove. He's gonna check the heating and the air conditioning system, if you have an air conditioning system. He's going to check everything in that house to make sure that it is working. So listen to him. Bring a little notebook and make sure you take your own notes as well. And just pay very close attention to what he advises you to get done. Some things are not deal breakers. Some things he may say, well, I recommend that you do this. And it may not be something that's time sensitive. And you can do that later on down the road. But then there are some things that he may point out and say, you need to get this done, taken care of. You might want to talk to the seller about that. So I'm gonna get to that in just a second. And then he also will inspect the roof. We had a chimney, so he inspected the chimney. He inspected everything. And then what he does is he'll go back home and he'll write up a report. And he'll use those pictures that he was taking while you were doing the inspection. The home inspector will send that report to your realtor. That is what happened in our case. Our realtor went over the report, and in that report, there are going to be a list of things that he suggests need to be fixed or need to be done. This is where, again, you will contact your realtor. She will contact you, he will contact you, and they will tell you, okay, we can bring these items back to the seller and ask that they fix them, or we can live with it as is and you can do it yourself. Now, depending on your situation, it may be different. If you are asking the seller to pay the closing costs, you may not have much room for negotiation to ask them to go back and fix things. In our case, and in most of Massachusetts, we are paying for the closing costs. So we had leverage here. So pretty much every item that was on that list, our realtor went back to the seller and said, you need to fix these things in order for them to move forward. In our situation, this was not a deal breaker. The seller was fine with fixing those things. That is not to say that will happen with you. So if you are curious to see what happens if the seller does not want to fix any of those things that were on the inspection report, once again, I recommend looking for a different video that is going to tell you about that, because that was just not our experience. One thing about the home inspection I want to let you know that I've seen people do and I think is a tremendous mistake. Never, ever, ever forego the home inspection. Now, some of you might be thinking, who would choose to not have a home inspection? People. That's why I'm telling you this. I've heard it. I've seen it. People will forego the home inspection just so they can get that house because so many other people are trying to get it. Do not do that. I don't care if it's a house that is old, brand new, or a house that no one's lived in for years. Never ever forego that homeowner inspection. One of the biggest things that I looked for in the inspection was I was waiting for an okay on the foundation, because if the foundation of the house is not good, that can mess up a whole lot of things. It's hard to go in and redo the foundation. You know what I mean? So stuff like that, but do not forego that homeowner inspection ever, ever, ever. So what happens after that? After the homeowner inspection, we had an appraisal of the property. Now, even though a house is listed for a certain price, that doesn't actually mean that a house is worth that amount. It doesn't mean that it's valued at that. And that is where an appraiser comes in. And what they will do is the realtor will contact an appraiser. Usually, in most cases, they have lists of appraisers that are their go-to people that they do for this. That was the case with us as well. They send the appraiser out to check out the property. I don't know why I can't talk today, you guys. I don't know what's going on. But they'll send an appraiser out to check out the property. And what the appraiser will do is, like the home inspector, they will also write up a report. And then they will send that report to the realtor. Now, take a deep breath, because this is also where some buyers run into problems. The appraisal could come back higher than the listing price. It could come back higher than what you offered on the house. It could also come back, in our case, lower than the listing price. Our appraisal came in significantly low. I don't want to go into all the details of that because that's actually in another video called Exciting News. So if you want to know about what happened with the appraisal, with our process, and why it came in low and all those details, please go back and watch that Exciting News video because I go into detail about all of that. But that being said, ours came in lower. So long story short, we had to renegotiate with the seller. We renegotiated, got the house back to the listing price, which was still, not really what we were expecting. Because with the appraisal, the bank will only loan you what the house is worth, not what the house is listed for. I also, again, explained that in that Exciting News video. So definitely go back and check that out. Now, once the appraisal is done and you've done any renegotiations that you needed to do with the seller and everybody's ready to move forward with this bad boy, you got to purchase something that you must have in order for you to even move into that house. And that item is called, that's right, honey buns, homeowner insurance. You cannot, you will not move into a house without having homeowner insurance. This is not something that is optional. So the realtor sent us over to different insurance companies. Again, most of them will have companies that they typically work with that they will recommend to you. That doesn't mean that's who you have to use, but in our case, it was beneficial for us to go with one of the ones that they recommended because the rates were great and we liked them. So we talked to the insurance agent for the homeowner insurance, and we went ahead and set up the start date for that, which they'll tell you what the start date will be. If anything changes, they'll adjust that date for when that insurance is going to start. And they'll also tell you what you need to pay. And this is very, very, very important. The very first year that you are going to be a homeowner, you cannot just pay 1 month of homeowner insurance. We had to pay it for the whole entire year. Now, after that first year, you'll get monthly payments, but not in the beginning. So I want to give you a heads up about that, because this is something that you may not be aware of, especially if you're used to getting insurance like for car insurance. Yeah, you pay it monthly. You don't have to pay the whole year up front. But for homeowners insurance, that house has to be insured for the whole year, that first year. So for the homeowners insurance, that was a little over $1,000 for us. Just want to give you a rough ballpark there. You pay that, you're good to go. But you must have it, or you cannot move in to that house. So what happens after that? So after you've secured your homeowner insurance and you've done all the paperwork in between that you needed to do, from the bank to the realtor to everybody else, we get to the step that most people want to hear about, and that is closing. So after all of that, we're ready to close on the house. Now, the way this will work is the realtor, they will come up with a closing date. For the closing, all parties must be present. So that means the seller, that means the buyer, and that means the lawyer that you have to represent you. In our situation, we chose to use our own lawyer, and we are very glad that we did that. And some people don't want to go that route. They want to use the lawyer that is recommended by the realtor. You can do that too, but we use our own. Now, because of COVID, it was not possible to have all parties in one room at the same time. So we actually signed on one date. The seller signed on a different day. They just couldn't have all of us in the room at the same time because of COVID. So that was a little bit different. But closing day. So on closing day, one thing I'll give you a heads up about, you'll have your date and your time set, but you need to be prepared to be there for a couple of hours. This is basically where you sit down at a table and your lawyer is sitting there with you, and he hands you papers to sign, and he's going to explain to you what those papers are. But even though he explains to you, still read it, look through it, know what you're signing. Know what you're signing. That is very important. Okay? Now, even though you're signing papers, it actually takes a couple of hours. It's a lot of papers to sign. Now, in our situation, some documents we had already had electronic copies of, so we were able to read some of this stuff already. We used a lawyer that was a family member, so this is what they kind of do for a living. They've done this multiple times, so it's a little bit different for us. But you will sign a lot of papers, so be prepared to be there from 1.5 to 2 hours. So just keep that in mind as well. And then after you sign all those papers, bud, you are officially a homeowner. You own the house. So after the closing, you will get your keys, and that gives you access to the property, which is now yours. I hope this was really helpful for you guys. If you didn't watch part 1, please go back and watch that. Because that has a lot more meat to it. This video is more about the end game process, and there's not as much meat to this. In reference to things that I recommend, I highly recommend that you keep a folder or an electronic folder like I did of every single document that you signed. So everything that I signed, all the email communication, the text messages, all of that is kept in an electronic folder on my Google Drive, just in case. Okay, not to say something's gonna happen, but just in case. I like to keep everything. I'm organized. I'm type A like that. Anyway, that is one of my recommendations to you. And my final recommendation, you guys, is you have to be patient through this process, especially during COVID, because things were taking longer and a little bit more difficult to do because of the COVID situation. So if you're an impatient person, this can be a really frustrating process for you. You need to be flexible, and you need to make sure that, look, if you're house shopping, you might want to let your boss or someone know, I did that, so I was able to get the time off for when things came up. But you might want to keep the people, your supervisors, in the know about that, so that way there's not all these unexpected, like, oh, I gotta leave in like an hour, like out of nowhere, because you'll get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, and there are a lot of documents you have to sign, not just during the closing, like through the whole process. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if you went through the first time home buyer program and your experience was different, or you have tips or suggestions that I may not have mentioned, please feel free to comment below. Let me know. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. If you are new to my channel, don't forget again to like and subscribe and share, and I will see you guys later on in another video. Bye, guys.